G'day, ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today we're going to have a, let's just say, pretty long discussion about World War Mode. The World War Mode has finally opened to the public, coming out in open beta testing. And one of the things that we have seen is, honestly, a rather interesting range of opinions. A rather interesting range of ideas, options, things that could be improved, things that are great as they are, and other things that, are neither here or there. One of the things that struck me particularly was the lineups themselves. The Battle of Vitebsk sits in about 1941, 1942, I believe, and you have mainly reserve and low-tier tanks, which, honestly, for me personally, is not my favorite place in the game. I prefer more Tier 4, Tier 5, some of Tier 6, and Tier 4. A lot of the Tier 3 props and a lot of the Tier 3 tanks as well are really, really fun. And I'm really, really hoping that we get to test some of them out in Operation Norwind, which is 1944, and the Battle for Khan, or Khan, something like that, in the future. And honestly, the World War Mode isn't really that bad. But there are a few things that we have to really get into. So, for example, for a start, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at roughly how it pans out. So, you start off with a map. This map has a line, a front line, shall we say, and you have units. You have tank units, you have an airfield which can spawn planes, mostly fighters, bombers, and attackers. So, for example, for the Battle of Vitebsk, the Axis, or the Germans, managed Bf-109E3s, Ju-87B2s, and Dornier Do-17Z3s, which is the larger heavy bomber version, or the heavier bomber version of the pencil, the flying pencil. Beautiful plane, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that we have some nice low-tier lineups, but obviously it's not my taste. Now, on the Russian side for planes, you had the MiG-315BK, or the Burger King, as I like to call it. You had the Su-2 TSS, which is alright. No one ever flies it because it's the last plane in a bracket, but it's okay. And then we had the IL-2 1941. And it was interesting to see how these lineups panned out. The planes, for example, in my opinion, on the Russian side, the fighters were superior, the attackers were superior, and the bombers were about the same. They were pretty useless, to be honest. They didn't have any great bombing capacity, and the bombs were really small. Couldn't really do anything in terms of actual damage. One of the things that I did find interesting, though, was the tank lineup. The tank lineup consisted of, for the Germans, Panzer IIc, Panzer 38T, Panzer 3F, Panzer 4E, Panzer 3E, and the Flak Panzer 1, as well as the Panzerjäger 1. So you have a wide variety of tank destroyer, tank, SPAA, and I guess light tank as well. Although the spotting mechanic wasn't really usable because you essentially had chevrons instead of actual markers. So if you think about it, it's kind of like your regular tanks battle where you've got no markers on the enemy team, but all markers for your allies, except for the planes. And where you spot a tank, it marks a chevron instead, which is kind of cool. It's really, really interesting, although I will admit when you do get overloaded by, for example, a convoy, or you get overloaded by AA positions, it's really, really difficult to actually see what you're fighting because it's just chevrons that you see. So, it has its ups and downs, and it's kind of cool. Perhaps if the chevrons disappeared after a while, or appeared, in like they're sparkling, I guess, if you look up at stars, they sort of twinkle. Perhaps if the chevrons, faded in and faded out, so that you only see a couple at once, I think that'd be kind of cool. And I think that would be nice, like a little extra touch to them. But what I'd really like to discuss is the lineups and some of the issues that players had with the lineups. So, one of the things that we see is the Russians have KV-1, T-34, 1940. They have BT-7, T-26, and Gaz-AA. They don't have any tank destroyers, but that's okay because, to be honest, they didn't really need them. What they had were the big bullies, the sort of heavy boys. And these were the tanks that they used to defend specifically. So you have a defensive side and you have an attacking side, which is the Germans. So what you have to do is you have to attack these, big fortifications, these big mountainous tanks, the KV-1L11 and the T-34 1940, which are very powerful. They were the best tanks in the lineup, arguably, although I will say the Panzer IV-E and the T-30 1940 sort of sit roughly equally when you look at a single head-on engagement. I will say I really did find it interesting that they chose to use extremely historical lineups, and that's one of the things that the War Thunder community has to realize is that history, everyone says this, and it's very, very cliche, but history is not balanced. King Tigers versus Shermans. Very, very clear-cut example of how history is not necessarily balanced. There are always going to be sides, armies with technological advantages, and that's just something that we have to understand because essentially at the end of the day we're playing a historical game. We're playing something or a rehash or a remake, a reenactment, if you will, of how a battle panned out, and perhaps, for example, if a certain side wins and in history they didn't, that could be alternate history. That's something interesting that draws people to the game. And that's something that I think we should, continue in this World War mode. I really, really like that. I find it very interesting. It has to be balanced, though. And one of the things that you find is that sometimes with history, you don't get that balance. I will say that there are 100% a way around it. There are always ways around it. But the thing for me that caused the most imbalance between the Soviet and the German side was that the Germans had a time limit and there were certain things that they had to do and certain game mechanics that they had to overcome in order to maintain that advancement and to ultimately get the victory. One of the things that we found as Team Think, we had the issues of certain battles not taking place at the right time, and I'll get to that a little bit later. So essentially what you want to do is you have artillery units, you have plane units, you have infantry units, and you have tank units. What you need to do is you need to maneuver them in a way that triggers a battle. You, for example, send your Bf-109s to intercept a flight of bombers, of Su-2s, for example, and what that does is that creates a mission. You jump into the missions tab, or the battles tab, and you select the battle that you want to participate in, you enter the battle, you fight it out like a normal RB match. To me, that's really awesome. I love the way that it plays out. It's kind of like a real-time strategy game, and then everyone jumps in, and it's a massive battle. Up to 20 versus 20, which is the biggest battle that has happened on live servers, with the exception of custom battles. Obviously, you get 64 versus 64, and you can get 128 people in a custom battle, but earning RP, earning lions, killing, putting numbers on stat cards, on the live server, in actual games, 20 versus 20 has never been done. It's always 15 versus 15. And so, you find this is really, really awesome. Like, it's a big step forward for War Thunder. I think 32 versus 32 will be interesting. Imagine 64 versus 64. The problem is finding players for that. I found that a lot of the squadrons that I had issues with fighting tended to be larger. The Tech Squadron has massive numbers, and we struggled to fight against them because we just did not have the numbers as Team Think. We had like 42 players, something like that, and Think just simply crumbled in the long run because mostly we just didn't have the numbers to put into battles. And that's one of the things that you got to be mindful of. Should games be limited to certain squadron sizes, should squadron sizes matter in the matchmaking? If you have a squadron made of 5 people, should it also be matched with squadrons made of 5 people? Or, say, for example, 1 to 10 people? Or, should our squadron as Think, which is about 40 members, be matched against, say, people no larger than 50 members, but no smaller than 30, in order to achieve some essence of balance. Is that what we want to do? And this is a discussion that I'd like to leave to everyone. Should we do this? Should this be a thing? And how should random players affect that? One of the things that I found that was quite frustrating, actually, was we would save vehicles like BF-109 E3s, and we would use them with 250 kilo bombs to kill KV-1s, because we found that that was our most effective MO. One of the things that happened often is we would have BF-109 E3s come in late to the battle because they were in another mission or they were coming from the airfield, and they would end up essentially not spawning or not being able to be taken out in first spawn. They would come in slowly, they would trickle in slowly about a minute after the battle started. And a minute after the battle started, random players would join. Random players would pick the BF-109Es, not take bombs, or they'd bomb gas trucks, or they would bomb targets that were useless to the game, or they would crash and burn, get shot down. And we couldn't manage effectively our numbers because the random players would come and take the highest tier tank, which is perfectly natural. It's 100% natural. It was, of course, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to take the best vehicle possible? That's what you always do when you take your lineups out. You take your favorite vehicle out first. If you're in a top tier lineup, you don't take the XM1, you take the M1A1, for example. And that's one of the things that I found to be frustrating. My commanders also found it extremely frustrating. Igno and Copsy, far out, man. They were livid sometimes because we often ended up losing battles. We often ended up losing entire games because some randoms took BF-109s and crashed them into the ground. And we lost the match, we lost a vital position. And it wasn't fun in that respect. So one of the things that I would like to see from Gaijin in the development of World War mode is the ability to lock certain vehicles to Squadron only, or to perhaps Squadron allies, which I'd like to get onto a little bit later. But essentially, not have randoms come in, take a KV-1 and die. They're valuable. They were very, very valuable to our victory as Russians, and the E3s were valuable to our victory as Germans. The Panzer IV-E as well was crucial to killing T-34s, and crucial to damaging KV-1s, or at least, killing them, taking them out. When we had teams that just took all the Panzer IV-Es, we found that we were pretty hard-pressed to kill a KV-1, especially the KV-1, because they're very heavy vehicles. They have a lot of armor, and that's the major issue for me personally as a player on the ground. If you're a commander, this is also frustrating, but I think there are more things that frustrate commanders personally. One of the things that you need to consider as a commander is you need to start actually jumping into battles because you don't get ratings. You don't get points, and essentially all you're doing is you're playing for your team. You're commanding for your team, and I would like to see something small like commanders getting a bit of rating, or maybe commanders, if you win an AI battle, or if you if you take a sector, if you get a victory, you get points. You get score in the main event, because otherwise it's not going to be really fun for commanders. It's not going to be rewarding, and commanders are going to have to keep switching out. You're going to have to get one commander who's got a set strategy and thinks, you know what, this is the best way to go, and then you're going to have someone else jump in when the commander goes into a battle to earn some points, and they're going to do something completely different. And when you're constantly switching strategies, it's really, really bad for your end result. One of the things I would really love to see is just somehow adding a little bit of score to certain things. Maybe just give it a silver lion bonus or something small. Maybe, a little bit of score, just to encourage commanders to stay in command and rather, manage their armies, rather than, having to jump out and into battles all the time. One of the other issues that we found particularly against a squadron called MLP, is we managed to take Vitebsk. We managed to capture K2, which is the sector that is required for the victory. We had 2 battalions of tanks in there. But because we couldn't action the battle in order to start, the assault, we couldn't start our battle, we almost lost. We very nearly lost. And at the end, I'll play the... Actually, you know what? In fact, now I'll show you the footage or exactly what was happening. And the TeamSpeak was very tense. Everyone was frustrated. Everyone was very tired. It was, early in the morning for the Europeans, late in the evening for the Americans. And everyone was just extremely frustrated. The MLP squadron seemed to also be using slightly cheesy mechanics, which is fine, but it's frustrating for commanders. And so one of the things that we had was a very frustrated team. And one of the things you don't want to do as a developer is frustrate your players, because they're going to leave. They're going to stop playing it if there's no reward and if the reward isn't big enough. One of the things that you need to do is add a priority list for battles to happen. So, for example, if you want battle number 28 to just forfeit, if you don't need that, but you need battle number 35, which was our case exactly, you can say forfeit these battles. You can surrender your units and move on down the list to battle number 28, 29, 30, 31, all the way down to 35, which is the crucial battle that you need to win the whole game. It doesn't matter if you lose a couple of battalions. If you capture K2, you win. And we actually managed to almost surround the sector K2, but we still couldn't win. We actually had the sector which on the map had Vitebsk itself, but we couldn't win. And it was really, really frustrating. It's one of the things that, I'd like to see improved. Give us a forfeit ability, or, the ability to say, put just AI in these battles. In this battle on our side, for example. And that'll just become an auto loss or a steamroll or something like that. One of the issues that we had with this particular match was the victory sector, K2, had 1 artillery in it and 2 tanks. The 2 tanks were ours. The enemy artillery was enemy, obviously. We managed to take that out in an AI battle, and that was very simple and straightforward. But a better win condition would be try and put more vehicles in the K2 sector rather than, have a battle in K2 and win, essentially. Or have a battle that allows you to push into K2. If you were able to, for example, roll all of your vehicles into the winning sector, you would win, because you would have more vehicles in the winning sector. It should be a sort of domination, but it should be whoever has the most in there. And that would encourage players and teams to manage their vehicles better. So, for example, if you had, 4 flak panzers and 3 gas trucks, the team with the 4 flak panzers would win the sector. Some of these things would be really, really nice for players working in a squadron. And the general squadron feeling, feeling over the whole battle was largely positive. There were some things people didn't like the low tiers. Some people didn't like that they were put against AI. Some players didn't like that the lobbies weren't full. And that's just some small things that can be ironed out over time. Perhaps by increasing rewards, making people want to play this. And I will say, a lot of people have complained about the rewards. And I'd just like to say, have a look at the tier that you're playing. You're playing reserve tanks. Go out into an arcade battle, play reserve tanks, see what the reward is, and then compare them. Because it's not really fair to compare what you would get at top tier to what you would get at reserve tier. I'd ask you to have a look at that and just judge for yourself whether you think that's about right. Speaking of arcade battles, One of the big problems for players was that it was a mixed flight model, much like the YouTube Cup. I believe this is supposed to be a bug. The esports coordinator has told me that it is in fact a bug and it should be ironed out in the next few whatever at a snail's pace. I wouldn't, hassle them too much. Put it on the forums, make a bug report. I wouldn't cry about it too much though, because it is not meant to be in the game that way. It is meant to be fully realistic when it comes to flight model and damage model, not arcade flight model, realistic damage model. That made me very frustrated in the YouTube Cup, but, I'm getting the hang of it. It's starting to come to, not grow on me, but it's no longer making me frustrated, which is nice. But for other players, especially players who are RB veterans, it is very, very frustrating. And for AB players, you can imagine jumping into your plane and it doesn't feel the same. Even though it says arcade battles, it doesn't feel as good, as responsive, as energetic. I can understand where the frustration comes from because I have felt that frustration from the RB side. One of the last issues that I would like to touch on is simply the individual player's perspective, the random. How do they feel? How did you feel about World War Mode? And I understand that World War Mode is meant to be a squadron thing. It is meant to be a thing that you work on as a team with a commander. But for the random player, it's not very fun. It's kind of hard if you're not coordinating. And obviously, you end up being a hindrance and you end up not having fun. So that's a double no-no, essentially. You really want to enjoy the game you're playing. And you also want to be contributing to your team. And both of these things are not happening for the individual player. And I honestly don't know how to fix it. The way that World War Mode is set up, it is designed for squadrons. It is designed for coordinated attacks, operations, etc. And I honestly have no idea how I would go about fixing it. The individual player experience isn't something that I've really experienced as a player during World War Mode because I've been just playing with my mates, to be honest. I spent about 7 or 8 hours, maybe more actually, maybe about 9 or 10 hours playing World War Mode, and honestly, it's not that bad. If the lineups were mid-tier, if everything was, slightly better balanced, it'd be really, really fun. It would be so much fun. For the individual player, I think perhaps giving them maybe an AI-controlled commander and their own AI lobbies would be interesting. But I think sometimes it's just down to the squadrons needing to communicate better and for, the individual players to listen. If a squadron doesn't want you to take an E3, you don't take an E3. If a squadron wants you to run a certain way, you run a certain way. Perhaps they're not trying to, throw you under the bus, because at the end of the day, that vehicle that you're controlling is theirs, and they need every single vehicle. So perhaps it's more of a community fix rather than a Gaijin fix. I don't really know how else to tackle this, apart from the community actually banding together and acting as a team. You never know. It could be kind of interesting to see. Maybe we all learn, we all take a little bit away from it and grow as a community. That'd be kind of cool. Imagine jumping in as a random and someone says, hey, we need this or we need that. Attention to this grid square. There's a T-34 in there and everyone reacts accordingly. It's already hard enough when you've got 40 people on TeamSpeak and you're trying to work things out. Imagine a random who doesn't have any microphone or voice control or anything like that. It's going to be harder. And one of the things that you've got to understand is you're essentially working for these guys. You're working for, say, Think, or you're working for Zavod or Tech ES or MLP or whoever. One of the things, you got to understand as a random is that the squadron has a certain set out plan. And one of the things that you got to understand as a squadron is that randoms just want to join in, have a bit of fun, and go home. How do you make that even for both sides? I have no idea. I'm going to leave it up to the comments section below. Tell me roughly how you would figure this out, because I'm kind of lost, honestly. Anyway, ladies and gents, I'm going to leave you with a couple of games that I played. I'm going to comment over them like an esports commentary. Hopefully, maybe I can do that one day. But until then, take care, and I'll catch you next time. So this particular battle is where I believe we have to attack. And as you can see, it won't let me go into free camera just yet, but essentially we have to take care of all of these guys and then take out the A point. There are some artillery positions around the A point, and they will actually roast you pretty hard if you're not careful. So I don't join this battle immediately. I come in a little bit later because I think I'm finishing off another battle. But as you can see, no one has yet spawned on the enemy team. We're sort of slowly pushing in, and this is exactly what happens. Have a look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Panzer 2C, Panzer 3E, Panzer 38T. Now I will say, I'm not a massive fan of the low tier lineups, as I probably already have said, but this is basically a testing bed, so I'm not really going to get angry about that. It's nothing to really sort of get my knickers in a knot about. I think it's more just a sort of thing where you just got to grin and bear it for now, and it'll come when it comes. Hopefully the next battles, the Norwind and El Alamein, will be really interesting because they're tiers 2 and 3 rather than 1 and 2. Maybe we'll have some Cold War or Vietnam War or, Iraq War. That'll be kind of interesting. I'd like to see that. That'd be kind of cool. Hello. It's a bit of a nice void. I guess that isn't really seen by players much, but that's okay. Not really fussed. There I am, chugging along in my Panzer II. You can see I'm pushing up through the forest, and what I want to do is basically get all the way through the forest and push through the town, push this position here, right about there, and then finally push up to these juicy little artillery positions. I have a 20mm autocannon, so I can shred the guns pretty quickly, and you can see they're already being shot at by Stavo right here, but there is a BT-7 coming to help. I want you to look at that. Off they go. Oh, wrong one. There we go. Lovely. A friendly BT-7 killed a friendly artillery, doing our job for us, which is lovely. It's beautiful. You can see already one has fallen, and it's actually quite well modeled, all things considered. It has its own damage model. I believe you can hull break it pretty easily. I mean, it's only very, very thin metal. That's actually kind of cool. You know what? I'm going to stop and take a wee screenshot. Screw the recording. Screw everything. Isn't that gorgeous? Would you have a look at that? Absolutely stunning. Maybe this will be the thumbnail. Look at that. Lovely. Alright, back to the game, because I'm a nice guy like that. Right, so BT-7 off here, coming through the town. You can see we're just trying to sort of push the town, and we're trying to take the town as much as possible. This was probably one of the most nerve-wracking battles that I've had, or one of the most frustrating, rather. There's a T-34 in the town, and the T-34 in the town is particularly strong. He's about to take out Scorch here in his Panzer 3E. Not much of a competition there. The Panzer 3E is probably better suited to fighting the BTs. Actually, it's more Amriki here in the Panzer 3 or Panzer 4E who's looking at this T-34 down the road. Look at him there. Look at him go. Actually, we're going to switch to Amriki and have a look exactly how he does this. He's looking, using his third-person camera, checking a look, and making sure that there's no one there. You can see that BT just took a little shot, and you can see the T-34 right behind him. It's kind of difficult, actually. But yeah, this is exactly what Amriki is seeing. He's trying to take a shot at the BT-7, and the BT-7 is distracted, so it gets instantly destroyed, loading that heat, And the T-34, I believe, is still alive. Having a go at D'Artagnan, who manages to get some fine shots into him. His breech is damaged. There's not a whole lot he can do. He's been surrounded, and this is exactly how you deal with tough targets. You surround them, you beat them to death, and you win. Very, very well played by my team, I guess. My good boys in Team Think. Poor Zezel here is on fire, but that's nothing from the unusual. He's trying to get these little emplacements, and so's Mr. Keckleston. We're trying to sort of push, and you can see we've basically pushed all the way to the edge of the town. Poor Zezel gets shot because he's Zezel, and I follow suit because I'm bad. But you can see we basically took up to this road. You can see, I believe that's Mystic. Yeah, that's Mystic sitting there. And they're trying to push back. We only have a certain amount of time. We are the blue team, and the blue team is running out of tickets. I try and spawn in a Panzerjäger 1 to try and deal with big boy like this T-34, who's going to make short work of D'Artagnan if he's not careful. And you can see, one shot, boom, and he's gone. Mystic is being a little bit of a chimp and taking on nothing. There he goes. Good old Mystic. He's out of there, doesn't want anything to do with it, and the T-34 has lost his turret ring. You can see he's hiding behind the building there, and Enrique is ready to push up and deal with him. But he fluffs the shot, and there's a BT-7 in front of him. BT-7 takes him out. Mystic is ready for a shock now because... where is he? There he is. Does Mystic see him? Does Mystic... oh, it's not Mystic. Never mind. I am the big dum-dum. Who is this in the Panzer 38T? We have... not Unicorn. Stavo. There we go. Turns around the corner. There we go. Beautiful shot from Mr. Stavo. Taking out the BT-7 and continuing to push back the resistance from the town. T-34 comes in and Stavo doesn't really have a chance, but it's okay because no shots are fired. The T-34 is now pushing deep into the town, and one of the things that we really have to deal with is that T-34, because if he catches any reinforcements, he'll start to run amok. The T-34s, as you can probably already tell, are very, very powerful in this, and they're one of the things that you really need to make sure that you take care of as the Germans in Operation or Battle for Vitebsk. Here he goes, a big boy T-34, sort of flanking down to the south. He's probably trying to get a flanking shot on Stavo, but honestly, if you're a T-34, you can probably just deal with him very, very quickly. And there he is. T-34 doesn't quite notice Stavo, and quick shots from a Flak Panzer. Shiz is there. He's another streamer, by the way. He's looking for a way out. He's sort of low on crew, and honestly don't really know what he's doing. He's just charging the Flak Panzer there. He could have taken him out with his machine guns. He should be repairing, and Stavo, I believe, manages to kill him. No? Shiz. That's why he's a god of war, ladies and gents. That's why he's a god of war. He manages to actually shoot the T-34 in the front. Nice shot, actually. That's a very, very good shot. Here's me. Again, what we're doing is we're trying to hold this line. We're trying to sort of push slowly to the town, and this one line happens to be our choke point. This road here that I'm looking at where Stavo and who's that, Zezel are. They're sort of pushing in and trying to take out that cap. I'm trying to find my way to the cap circle as well, as far as I'm aware. D'Artagnan coming in, and Enrique from the south. We're basically starting to push them out of the town now, and all they have left are T-26s. 4 of them have spawned with... 4? 3 of them have spawned. 2 BT-5s have spawned as well, and we're basically starting to cap them out, pushing them back to their spawn, and making them lose the match. Here we go. We finally managed to get the cap, and that's game. We've managed to push them back far enough. So this is a really, really nice game mode, actually, when you come to have a look at it. You essentially just push as hard as you can, try and root them out, try and take out the valuable targets like the T-34, like the KV-1, Panzer III-E, try and resist units in the air. And in fact, the reason that we didn't have units in the air is because neither of the commanders from both sides of the war chose to put planes in that sector. And what you get is just a tank-on-tank engagement, and that's kind of cool. So you get just tank on tank. Sometimes you get just plane on plane. Sometimes you get a mix. And that's where the tactics come in. You need to decide which of your planes are better. You need to decide which of your tanks are better. Who gets the support? Who needs the support? At what stage? And it's all very, very complicated and very tactical. There's a very large amount of depth to it, especially when you have varied lineups like what we've got currently, and the historical lineups make it nice and fun as well. World of Tanks. But you have to take it, and as you can see here, let's jump into the hover camera. There we go. We have, I believe that's an infantry division, and this is my team, Team Think, and we're going to have a look at exactly how this pans out. So as you can see, there are only two people on each team, and they'll eventually join as the battle wears on. So these battles don't immediately start. They start, as you can see, there's a T-34 that's spawned on the enemy team, and that'll be joined by a BT-7 and a couple of BT-7s, as you can see right here. They're heading off, and essentially what they want to do is they want to cap this town, and they want to hold it. And they want to push further. So there are essentially three major waves to this. And they're already starting on leg 1. Okay, so what they're doing is... Hang on. I haven't bound a key to that. Lovely. So, essentially, what they need to do is they need to take this area. And once they've taken this area, then they can move on to this area because there's a gap here. And obviously you can contest from here. Obviously, Panzer IV is not ideal for that. But if you can go along these ridge lines, as you can see, there's sort of a little... Oh, someone else spawned. So you can see, more people are joining over time. And let me just show you these lovely little divots in the map. So, these little divots and these sort of hills, probably where rain runs off, is basically where you can hide. And you can fit a whole tank down there. And what our team isn't doing at the moment is using these. We're sort of outnumbered, and the artillery is going off. Isn't that beautiful? We have a friendly Panzer IV who's sitting in some of the defender positions. This would be really, really awesome for like higher tier stuff, you know, Chieftains versus T-34 or T-54s. It'd be awesome. So as you can see on our team, we have some guys coming in. That's Scorch and that's Havico. They're going to be joining us in a little bit. And exactly, let's follow. Oh, that's not good. Havico hasn't spawned yet, but we have Blackheat here in the T-34, and as you can see, he is pushing really, really aggressively, and he doesn't have a whole lot of resistance. He's only got the Panzer IV, the Panzer IIIs, and a couple of Panzer 38Ts. That's the one. But he's also got the little AA guns, and as you can see, they're popping up as little chevrons on the map. He can't really see markers as such, so this is just for us. But what happens is you get little chevrons. So just to clarify, he doesn't see these markers. He sees the chevrons only. And we're just seeing these markers for a demonstration purpose. So actually, we could probably go and turn them off briefly. And this is exactly what someone like Blackheat here in the T-34 is doing. Now, I'm about to join, and I'll show you exactly what's going on. So this team here, the opposing team, which is, I believe, MLP. MLP is the team that we're facing. They're trying to advance on our A position. And what we want to do is we want to defend that for a certain amount of time. And as you can see, the tickets are slowly bleeding. And there we go. Blackheat's got himself a nice hit onto one of the Panzer IVs. This Panzer IV, once it despawns, obviously cannot spawn in again. And obviously, you want to keep as many as possible. That's the key to the entire game. Now, here I go, in front here, chugging along. Nothing unusual, sorry. And it's really, really interesting, right? So what we're doing is we're trying to take this big area here. This one here, Section 2, let's call it. But the problem is, we have to cross either a massive line here, or go along the trees, try and go along the bottom here, and it's not really doing much. You can see I'm shooting at something blindly. I don't realize it's the T-34 at that point, but I managed to sort of try and get him to pull back. You can see the fire coming. I've got support on the north here, so I'm going to keep pushing that. And I've got a little bit distracting him. I see Scorch there in the Panzer 38T, who's distracting him, and I get a wizard shot through the driver's port. That kills the T-34. And that's a really valuable target. That's a very, very valuable kill. You can see, now that I've done that, I'm basically able to push onto the next sector. I have control over this entire sector now, and I can push on. Although the enemies can actually take that back from these positions here. You can see there's a T-26, a BT-7, and another BT-7, and I've gone and taken out this T-26. So we're continuously pushing, doing some great work here in the Flak Panzer 1, and you can see that I can't see anything either. I'm just pushing. Mystics there on my right, and I can also see a couple of things running around, and it's actually quite difficult. I'm getting a couple of frame drops there. I apologize for that, but that's just something we'll have to live with. Jump back to the hover camera. Maybe that'll fix things. Apparently not. Okay, we're rolling anyway. T-34 or T-26, T-26. You can see Mystic's just been hit, and what we're looking at doing is taking out as many things possible. That T-26 is down, but there's still a BT-5 on the other side of the church to Mystic, and there's still the T-26. Mystic's gone and taken out something in front, which is very good work for him, and we're sort of roaming around. You can see this BT-5 is on the other side of the church. I don't think Mystic sees it, and we're going to have an interesting little fight on our hands. Maybe Mystic's now seen him, and he's going to come around. The BT-5's looking at him, and the BT-5 is pushing out side on. I can't even see this guy. I'm focusing on another target, but Mystic manages to kill the guy. If there's a bit of better communication between me and Mystic, we could have had this guy very easily. But good old me is going for that BT-7 over there, 600 meters away. And I can't do anything but take out his cannon breach. That's not really a massive concern though, because you can see they're basically down to Gaz AAs at this point. We've managed to push them out of the town. Oh my god, I missed another one. Have a look at that, ladies and gents. I managed to miss a fair few. But that's okay, because I'm trying to push this left side here with Mystic. And it's working. That BT-7 over there has died, and we're very, very firmly pushing. You can see this Gaz is trying to harass Mystic, but, you know, it can't really do anything. What he should have been doing is communicating to that BT-7, hey, push up, push up. There's a Panzer 4E that we can take out, and that's very valuable. And what we're essentially doing is... My god, I'm blind. I'm really blind. But that's okay, because I've got good teammates to back me up here. This Panzer 38T, and you can see I managed to take out another Gaz truck. We're basically forcing them back now, all the way back to their spawn. And, there I go. A single artillery strike from a Gaz AA. Well, there's me dead, but that's okay because I can then respawn, which is really, really nice. Our team has essentially got mostly tanks in this mode. We managed to push them all the way back to their spawn, and we've pretty much pushed them out of the game at this point. You can see it's more or less just a cleanup job. We smashed them pretty hard by working together as a team, clearing out through the 3 stages of the town, and the enemies couldn't push our ACAP. And it's awesome. Have a look at this. This is probably some of the neatest, like, it looks amazing. Look at this. It's screenshot worthy. I love it. And you can see Panzer 4E defending the cap. We have our little, I believe they're 50mm AT guns or 37mm AT guns. Hans and his assistant there. It's really, really nice. Some things that World War Mode has done is really good. It's really, really good. And, yeah, I'm kind of impressed by some of the things that they've done. Other things, obviously, it could be worked on. It's not perfect, but you know, this is a first stage. I wouldn't stress too much about how this is going. It's not too bad. But this is exactly how a World War mode battle will pan out. In some cases, you're fighting a convoy, and as you can see, a couple more people spawned in. We're just looking at cleaning up now, and it's a very, very simple cleanup job. There we go. There he goes. And if the enemy team dies and there's no one left, you don't get an instant ticket bleed. What happens is it takes a couple of seconds for the game to realize, hey, we've got no one left on one team, and it gives a 60-second timer from when everyone leaves the battle. So you can still rejoin. There's a join in progress function, and it's kind of cool. The way this pans out is interesting to me, and it's something. It's like a little battle in an entire war, but the whole thing pans out very, very interestingly. Have a look at that. There we go. Everyone sort of gets together at the end, has a little party. Look at that. Aren't they cute? Aren't they cute? Oh, we've got some not safe for work tank action here. Better look away, kids. But yeah, this is exactly how a battle pans out. And in this case, there were no planes. And in some cases, there are mostly planes. There are battles where there are planes only. And I think I might do a couple more of these where you can see exactly how these battles pan out. How, you know, certain things happen and certain battles are won and lost. It's kind of cool. I really like it. And the Flak Panzer is an absolute monster. If you made it to the end of the video, type in the comments section, World War mode is the best. We need World War 3 now. See you guys.